Здравейте, пичове! Записвам това. Бях стигнал до 20-та минута на това видео, но просто усещам, че мозъка ми просто днес въобще не го бива. Нито за разсъждение, нито за нищо. Предполагам, че просто съм може би от калорийния дефицит, не знам точно от какво е, но просто наистина не мога да се концентрирам много добре днес. И всичко малко ме дразни. Току-що нещо, имах някаква нотификация от другия ми компютър просто и въобще не можа да вляза пак в ритъм. Затова няма да се напъвам да изказвам мнения по тези следващи теми, защото се опитах и не излезе нищо и се изнервих. И затова ще се опитам този път просто да ги прочета нещата. Ако наистина имам нещо да кажа, ще го кажа. Ако не, хараби. Така. On the God within us. You are doing an excellent thing, one which will be wholesome for you. If, as you write me, you are persisting in your effort to attain sound understanding. It is foolish to pray for this when you can acquire it from yourself. We do not need to uplift our hands towards heaven or to beg the keeper of a temple to let us approach his idol's ear, as if in this way our prayers were more likely to be heard. God is near you. He is with you. He is within you. This is what I mean, Lucius. A Holy Spirit indwells within us, one who marks our good and bad deeds and is our guardian. As we treat this Spirit, so are we treated by it. Indeed, no man can be good without the help of God. Can one rise superior to fortune unless God helps him to rise? He it is that gives noble and upright counsel. In each good man a God doth dwell, but what God know we not. If ever you have come upon a grove that is full of ancient trees which have grown to an unusual height, shutting out a view of the sky by a veil of bleached and intertwining branches, then the loftiness of the forest, the seclusion of the spot, and your marvel at the thick and broken shade in the midst of the open spaces, will prove to you the presence of deity. Or if a cave made by the deep crumbling of the rocks holds up a mountain on its arc, a place not built with hands but hollowed out into such a spaciousness by natural causes, your soul will be deeply moved by a certain intimation of the existence of God. We worship the sources of mighty rivers, we erect altars and places where great streams burst suddenly from hidden sources. We adore springs of hot water as divine, and consecrate certain pools because of their waters, of their dark waters, or their immeasurable depth. If you see a man who is unterrified in the midst of dangers, untouched by desires, happy in adversity, peaceful amid the storm, who looks down upon men from a higher plane and views the gods on a footing of equality, will not a feeling of reverence for him steal over you? Will you not say, this quality is too great and too lofty to be regarded as resembling this petty body in which it dwells? A divine power has descended upon that man. When a soul rises superior to other souls, when it is under control, when it passes through every experience as if it were of a small account, when it smiles at our fears and at our prayers, it is stirred by a force from heaven. A thing like this cannot stand upright unless it be propped by the divine. Therefore, a great part of it abides in that place from whence it came down to earth. Just as the rays of the sun do indeed touch the earth but still abide at the source from which they are sent, even so the great and hallowed soul which has come down in order that we have a nearer knowledge of divinity, does indeed associate with us, but still cleaves to its origin on that source it depends, thither it turns its case and strives to go, and it concerns itself with our doings only as being superior to ourselves. Доста освежаващо да прочетеш подобно нещо, имайки предвид, че все още не е било поставено в рамка от различни неизлюпени религии все още по него време. What then is such a soul? One which is resplendent with no external good but only with its own. For what is more foolish than to praise in a man the qualities which come from without? And what is more insane than to marvel at characteristics which may at the next instant be passed on to someone else? A golden bit does not make a better horse. The lion with gilded mane, in process of being trained and forced by weariness to endure the decoration, is sent into the arena in quite a different way from the wild lion whose spirit is unbroken. The latter, indeed, bold in his attack as nature wished him to be, impressive because of his wild appearance. And it is glory that none can look upon him without fear, its favored in preference to the other lion, that languid and gilded brute. No man ought to glory except in that which is his own. We praise a vine if it makes the shoot steam with increase, if by its weight it bends to the ground the very poles which hold its fruit. Would any man prefer to this vine one from which gold grapes and golden leaves hang down? In a vine the virtue peculiarly its own fertility, in a man also we should praise that which is his own. Suppose that he has a retinue of comely slaves and beautiful house, that his farm is large and large his income. None of these things is in the man himself, they are all on the outside. Praise the quality in him which cannot be given or snatched away, that which is the peculiar poverty of the man. Do you ask what this is? It is soul, and reason brought to perfection in the soul. For a man is a reasoning animal, therefore man's highest good is attained, if he has fulfilled the good for which nature designed him at birth. And what is it which this reason demands of him? The easiest thing in the world, to live in accordance with his own nature. But this is turned into a hard task by the general madness of mankind. We push one another into vice, and how can a man be recalled to salvation when he has none to restrain him, and all mankind to urge him on? Farewell. Short and sweet, бих казал. I'm glad to learn through those who come for you that you live. This is topic on master and slave. Забравих да спомена, че това е on master and slave. 56-та страница. I'm glad to learn through those who come from you that you live in a friendly terms with your slaves. This befits a sensible and well-educated man like yourself. They're slaves, people declare. Nay, rather they're men. Slaves. Slaves. No, they're unpretentious friends. Slaves. No, they're our fellow slaves if one reflects that fortune has equal rights over slaves and free men alike. This is why I smile at those who think it degrading for a man to dine with his slave. But why should they think it's degrading? It's only because purse-proud etiquette surrounds a householder at his dinner with a mob of standing slaves. The master eats more than he can hold, and with monstrous greed loads his belly until it is stretched and at length ceases to do the work of a belly, so that he is a greater pains to... Sorry for the interruption. The master eats more than he can hold, and with monstrous greed loads his belly until it is stretched, and at length ceases to do the work of a belly, so that he is a greater pains to discharge all the food that he was to stuff it down. All this time the poor slaves may not move their lips even to speak. The slightest murmur is repressed by the rod, even a chance sound, a cough, a sneeze, or a hiccup, is visited with the lash. There is a grievous penalty for the slightest breach of silence. All night long they must stand about, hungry and dumb. The result of it all is that these slaves who may not talk in their master's presence talk about their master, naturally. But the slaves of former days who were permitted to converse not only in their master's presence but actually with him, whose mouths were not stitched up tight, were ready to bare their necks for their master, to bring upon their own heads any danger that threatened him. They spoke at the feast but kept silence during torture. Finally, the saying in allusion to this same high-handed treatment becomes current: as many enemies as we have slaves. They're not enemies when we acquire them, we make them enemies. Това ми напомня малко на някои работни места, които съм имал в миналото. Реално тук бих казал, че доста граничат. Не е толкова, разбира се, в така радикалност, може би в цялост, но просто просто е power trip на това да имаш някаква сила над, нали, да си шеф просто. И правя, нали, разлика от това как съм се бил отнасял, как се отнасяли с мен едни и други. Това е power tip като цяло. Мога долу горе да разбера, нали, Откъде идва също така, когато някой ти даде малко повече, когато вече сте малко по-напред, имате доста повече отговорности, имате повече знания, хората решат повече на вас, трябва да отговаряте за други хора, да ги учите и така нататък. Бих казал, че трябва да се внимава също по какъв начин се подхожда, защото е много важен подхода и тона и всичко, за да не се превърнете в същите хора, които не сте харесвали. I shall pass over other cruel and inhuman conduct toward them, for we maltreat them not as if they were men, but as if they were beasts of burden. When we recline at a banquet, one slave mops up the disgorged food, another crouches beneath the table and gathers up the leftovers of the tipsy guests. Another carves the priceless game birds with unerring strokes and skilled hands. He cuts choice morsels along the breast or the rump. Hapless fellow, to live only for the purpose of cutting fat capons correctly. Unless indeed the other man is still more unhappy than he, who teaches this art of pleasure's sake, rather than he who learns it because he must. Another, who serves the wine, must dress like a woman and wrestle with his advancing years. He cannot get away from his boyhood, he is dragged back to it, and though he has already acquired a soldier's figure, he is kept beardless by having his hair smoothed away or plucked out by the roots, and he must remain awake throughout the night, dividing his time between his master's drunkenness and his lust. In the chamber he must be a man, at the feast a boy. Another whose Another whose duty it is to put a valuation on the guest must stick to his task, poor fellow, and watch to see whose flattery and whose immodesty, whether of appetite or of language, it is to keep them an invitation for tomorrow. Think also of the poor purveyors of food, who know their master's tastes with delicate skill, who know what special flavors will sharpen their appetite, what will please their eyes, what new combination will rouse their cloyed stomachs, and what food will excite their loathing through sheer satiety, and what will stir them to hunger on that particular day. With slaves like these the master cannot bear to dine. He would think it beneath his dignity to associate with his slave at the same table. Heaven forfend. But how many masters is he creating in these very men? I have seen standing in the line before the door of Callistus the former master of Callistus. I have seen the master himself shut out while others were welcomed. The master who once fastened the for sale ticket on Callistus and put him in the market along with the good-for-nothing slaves. But he has been paid off by that slave who was snuffed out in the first lot of those on whom the crier practices his lungs. The slave, too, in his turn that he's cut his name from the list, and in his return has adjudged him unfit to enter his house. The master sold Callistus, but how much has Callistus made his master pay for? Kindly remember that he whom you call your slave sprang from the same stock, is smiled upon by the same skies, and on equal terms with yourself breathes, lives, and dies. It is just as possible for you to see in him a free-born man as for him to see you a slave. As a result of the massacres in Marius' day, many a man of distinguished birth who was taking the first steps towards senatorial rank by service in the army was humbled by fortune, one becoming a shepherd, another caretaker of a country cottage. Despise, then, if you dare, those to whose estate you may at any time descend, even when you're depriving them. I do not wish to involve myself in too large a question and to discuss the treatment of slaves toward whom we Romans are excessively haughty, cruel, and insulting. But this is the kernel of my advice. Treat your inferiors as you would be treated by your betters, and as often as you reflect how much power you have over a slave, remember that your master has just as much power over you. But I have no master, you say. You are still young, perhaps you will have one. Do you not know at what age Hecuba entered captivity, or Croesus, or the mother of Darius, or Plato, or Diogenes? Associate with your slave on kindly, even on affable terms. Let him talk with you, plan with you, live with you. I know that at this point all the exquisites will cry out against me in the body. They will say, there is nothing more debasing, more disgraceful than this. But these are the very persons whom I sometimes surprise kissing the hands of other men's slaves. Do you not see even this, how our ancestors removed from masters everything individuous, and from slaves everything insulting? They called the master father of the household, and the slaves members of the household, a custom which still holds in the mime. They established a holiday on which masters and slaves should eat together, not as the only day for this custom, but as obligatory on that day in any case. They allowed the slaves to attain honors in the household and to pronounce judgment. They held that a household was a miniature commonwealth. Do you mean to say, comes to the retort, that I must seat all my slaves at my own table? No, not any more than that you should invite all free men to it. You are mistaken if you think that I would bar from my table certain slaves whose duties are more humble, as, for example, yonder muleteer or yonder herdsman. I propose to value them according to their character, and not according to their duties. Each man acquires his character for himself, but accident assigns his duties. Invite some to your table, because they deserve the honor, and others that they may come to deserve it. For if there is any slavish quality in them as the result of their low associations, it will be shaken off by intercourse with men of gentler breeding. You need not, my dear Lucilius, hunt for friends only in the forum or in the Senate house. If you are careful and attentive, you will find them at home also. Good material often stands idle for want of an artist. Make the experiment, and you will find it so. As he is a fool who when purchasing a horse does not consider the animal's points, but merely his saddle and bridle, so he is doubly a fool who values a man from his clothes or from his rank, which indeed is only a robe that clothes us. He is a slave. His soul, however, may be that of a free man. He is a slave, but shall that stand in his way? Show me a man who is not a slave. One is a slave to lust, another to greed, another to ambition, and all men are slaves to fear. I will name you an ex-consul who is slave to an old hag, a millionaire who is slave to a serving maid. I will show you youths of the noblest birth in serfdom of pantomime players. No servitude is more disgraceful than that which is self-imposed. You should therefore not be deterred by these finicky persons from showing yourself to your slave as an affable person, and not proudly superior to them. They ought to respect you rather than fear you. Some may maintain that I am now offering the liberty cap to slaves in general, and toppling down lords from their high estate. Because I bid slaves respect their masters instead of fearing them, they say, this is what he plainly means. Slaves are to pay respect as if they were clients on early morning callers. Anyone who holds this opinion forgets that what is enough for a god cannot be too little for a master. Respect means love, and love and fear cannot be mingled. So I hold that you are entirely right in not wishing to be feared by your slaves, and in lashing them merely with the tongue. Only dumb animals need the tongue. That which a thong, so there is no confusion between those two words, so I hold that you are entirely right in not wishing to be feared by your slaves, and in lashing them merely by the tongue, so the language, by words. Semicolon. Only dumb animals need a thong. That which annoys us does not necessarily injure us, but we are driven into wild rage by our luxurious lives, so that whatever does not answer our whims arouses our anger. We don the temper of kings, for they too, forgetful alike of their own strength and other men's weakness, grow white-hot with rage, as if they had received an injury, when they are entirely protected from danger of such injury by their exalted station. They are not unaware that this is true, but by finding fault they seize upon opportunities to do harm. They insist that they have received injuries in order that they may inflict them. I do not wish to delay you longer, for you need no exhortation. This, among other things, is a mark of a good character. It forms its own judgments and abides by them. But badness is fickle and frequently changing, not for the better, but for something different. Farewell. Ами, както казах по-рано, няма да, така да кажа, искам вместо да говоря, просто да се насладя на нещата, които прочетох току-що. Затова това видео го оставяме по-кратичко и ще продължим утре с On Quibbling as Unworthy of the Philosopher. my friends. I wish you a very nice day. I will see you when I see you. Yes, goodbye.